My name is Lulanga Sydney. I'm a tutor for Management in Action. The code is MIA0S3. In this course, we'll be looking at management itself. We'll refer to the fathers of management. We'll look at Frederick Taylor. We'll look at Max Weber. We'll allude to Peter Drucker, and then the new method which is coming up of management by walking around. Now, this course aims at a number of issues, but we'll just look at the 4 objectives that we will try to underline. One of them is that by the end of this course, you should be able to demonstrate an understanding of the role of management, be able to demonstrate your understanding of managerial effectiveness and managerial efficiency, demonstrate the ability to define the management skills and their relative importance to managers, and also be able to demonstrate your skill in helping managers to become effective. So management in action looks at mostly 2 things or 2 issues, 2 elements, 2 factors. First, we'll look at the scientific aspect of management, and then we'll also look at the studies and test methods that are used to identify the best and the most efficient way in managing organizations and managing people, managing resources. Now, scientific management is mostly associated with F.W. Taylor, who is called the father of scientific management. The studies and tests that we are going to use are mostly based on the theories, practices, looking over a period of time that have been put into effect, and those that have been suggested today, to ensure that management remains effective, efficient, and it's recognized, or its products remain of a certain standard, and it's able to produce quality products. Now, management has undergone so many changes. One of the major changes from the classic times to the modern times, which are known as the technology age, is the issue of scientific management. Scientific management made a lot of changes, or it has a bigger role in management. And one of the contributing factors that it has made in modern management is the practice of giving employees rest breaks throughout the day. So scientific management emphasizes on skills, training of employees, and also giving them rest. So not necessarily employees waiting for tea break or lunch break, or when to knock off, when they can have rest. If the employee feels like having rest, taking a walk around the organization or the premises, going for a short nap, it's encouraged by scientific management. So scientific management studies and tests methods to identify the best and the most efficient ways on how employees can remain productive. Now, there are 4 key management principles that Frederick Taylor brings about. One, he says that an organization or the workplace needs to develop a science for each element of a person's work, which somehow replaces the old rule of thumb method, where an employee is told what to do, an employee does not think, an employee is forced to be a jack of all trades. But Frederick Taylor says there has to be some scientific understanding to the enforcement of laws, enforcement of work, and the description of work, job description, job specification. It has to be backed up by science. And then he also talks about scientifically selecting and then training, teaching and developing the workforce. He says we need to look at a number of elements in order to select certain employees, understand that these employees have the ability and the capability to do certain types of work. Then we give them the tools that they need. And then also there's need for cooperation with the people to ensure that all work is done in accordance with the principles of science. So Frederick Taylor, science means a lot. And that's how he comes up with this scientific management in the workplace. He also says the last one is that almost equal division of work should be given to the employees, especially those who are doing the same type of work. And then the responsibility has to lie between management and the work people, or the employees and the management. So he says management, it's not the responsibility of the management to closely supervise the employees, but so long the employees are trained and they know what to do, and therefore they can supervise themselves. We come to Max Weber. Max Weber talks about bureaucracy, bureaucratic management, and he mostly talks about line of command, control on the basis of knowledge, expertise and experience. So he says someone who should be appointed as a supervisor or any managerial position should have enough knowledge, expertise and experience that puts him or her at an advantage over the group of people that is leading. So for example, he says that a manager should be more knowledgeable, should have more expertise and experience in that line of the work force or workplace where he or she is supposed to exert their authority. So for example, if it's an institution and someone is appointed in the line of authority, if it's a learning institution, the person should have higher qualification than the ones that they are managing. They should have a lot of expertise, should be able to do so many things, should be able to teach, should be able to manage the institution and or the department, and also have a lot of experience in that line of duty. And therefore, they are able to consult, to be consulted, and people have a lot of confidence in their way of running things. So the aim of bureaucracy literally talks about people that should be hired should be based on merit, meritorious appointment, meritorious compensation, meritorious hiring. So he says that Max Weber says people should be hired based on merit, on qualifications, skills, competencies, capabilities, experience. And then even when it comes to promotion, it should be the same. So someone should not be promoted based on impulse, but the person should earn the promotion, should earn the hiring. And then it also talks about the chain of command, that it should be very clear who is in charge, what is the role of each and everybody in the organization, whom do they report to, what is expected of them, and all kinds of stuff. So for him, clarity needs to be clear, that the employees are able to see in the organization who, what, how, where, and when needs to be done. He also talks about division of labor. Max Weber is not for the idea of jack of all trades. Max Weber is for the idea of specialization. So people should know what is expected of them. So each employee should be given a clear job description, a clear job specification. An employee should be given proper orientation or induction into the job. An employee should understand one's role, one's position, and should fulfill the expectations that are put forward. Then he says there should be equity or an effort made to bring about equality in the workplace, especially in the application of rules and procedures. So there should be impartiality. And then he says everything that is recorded should be in writing. The other point that Max Weber talks about is that there should be a clear separation of management from owners. So, but he doesn't say that owners should not be managers. He says the managers, if an owner is a manager, should realize when they're doing the job as a manager and when they're in the position of owners. So there should be clear demarcation of that. And then the employees will understand how to relate with the same person wearing two hats. Henri Fayol talks about administrative management. And administrative management, Henri Fayol talks about the 5 functions of management and the 14 principles of management. And in this case, we'll focus on the 14 principles of management. Henri Fayol also talks about division of labor, like Max Weber. He talks about authority and responsibility. He talks about discipline. He talks about initiative. He talks about equity, order. And then he talks about centralization. He says that employees should be able to understand where they are, why they are there, what is expected of them, carry out their duties. They should be looked after, so the social aspect for Henri Fayol matters, apart from the technical aspects. And then he says that in an organization, there should be links. Since there's division of labor, it means that the work of one employee should complement the work of the other. And these employees need to realize that they are part of the chain. And these employees should be remunerated accordingly. These employees should realize that they are being treated fairly. And there should be order and discipline in the organization. So Henri Fayol emphasizes that an employee should realize that he or she is a link, and it should be a strong link in the organization. So what is the importance of management? Management influences all phases in an organization. It influences the operations, the strategic level. It also influences the day-to-day carrying out of duties, the planning, the development, implementation, and the analysis of all the operations in the organization. It also influences the markets, whether to do with resources, products, resources. It could be raw materials, it could be human resources, or any other resources. So management influences that. It also influences the workforce, mostly on how to manage people, ensuring that you are able to, you become what you call an employer of choice, where employees make an effort to be part and parcel of the organization. So what's the task of management? Management is defined as a process of continuing and relating activities. So there are certain activities in the organization that management associates itself with. But management is also the face of the organization. So it should be able to provide leadership. It also involves itself and concentrates on reaching organizational goals. Organizational goals are set and they should be understood by each and every employee. It works with and through people and other organizational resources. So management is there for the organization, for the good of the organization. It's also there for the good of the people. So management should realize the key or the cardinal role that human resources plays in the organization. It should be able to identify people as people and be able to manage people as such. The management process Mostly here we are talking about the management functions which are associated with Henri Fayol, of planning, organizing, influencing, controlling, and coordinating. So the task of the management is to ensure that it gathers enough information that measures the recent performance. How is the organization performing? Who is doing what? When is it done? How is it done? What is the cost? What is the profit? All that needs to be analyzed by the management. It needs to collect that data. And then it needs to compare the present performance with the pre-established standards, the goals, the objectives of that have been set. So you look at the performance and you look at the set goals, whether it's matching or they are being fulfilled. And then it also determines the modifications, the changes that can be taken, can be undertaken to meet the pre-established standards. So the pre-established standards are not cast in stone. They need to be modified to suit the needs as they arise, or the challenges as they arise. So management, in short, should be proactive, should not be reactive, proactive in a way that it should be abreast with the demands of the time. Management should also be ready for action, should be biased towards action. It should be closer to all the stakeholders, especially the customers. It should demonstrate autonomy and entrepreneurship. It should realize that its productivity through people. Management should be hands-on, value-driven, oriented. It should be in a way that it should not be too broaded. It should be lean, based or focusing on performance. And then it should try to tighten up loose ends. So it should be sticking to the action, to the understanding, what you call sticking to the knitting. Management looks at the resources and organizational resources. Management resources are mostly four in an organization. There's what you call human resources, monetary resources, which is financial resources, the raw materials that you use to produce your products or to provide your services, and then capital. Now, capital is put into two. There's fixed assets and fixed assets. And these four elements will determine the managerial effectiveness and managerial efficiency. And if these are worked on well, or they are controlled properly, an organization will either be effective or be efficient. And if they are left loose, the organization may be ineffective and inefficient. Now, what about universality of management? Universality of management, management applies to all types of organizations, whether small, big, large, global, domestic. All organizations have some kind of management, but it varies from one type of organization to the other, and that determines the type of management style that can be put into effect. We have talked about Henri Fayol. When we are looking at the theory of characteristics of management, we focus on Henri Fayol and Forbes. Now, Henri Fayol talks about positive physical and mental qualities that are necessary when it comes to management. Management should be, anybody in management should be physically fit, should have a positive attitude towards life, towards work, should have the right attitude, and should also be mentally sound. He also says that there has to be special knowledge related to the operation in the area that he or she controls. So that's Henri Fayol. Now, on Forbes says that there has to be personal qualities, core competencies the ones that differentiate this manager from the other, the strength of the manager. The manager should be enthusiastic, should be earnest of purpose, should be confident or self-confident, and should have faith in oneself. So that's what Forbes talks about. Now, what about management careers? We need to understand what career means. Career stages, life stages, and performance. There are a number of issues when it comes to career stages. We need to understand the exploration stage, where someone discovers one's potential, one's weaknesses, works on them, and then they move to the stage of establishing oneself, sinking your feet or finding your feet in an organization, managerial position, and be able to maintain that. Now, if you are able to maintain your career as a manager, that's what is called career plateauing, like a plateau, a flat land. So you are stable. Now, this stability does not last forever. There is a possibility of declining, becoming irrelevant, becoming too used to the place, and therefore the impact is felt less. There is also a possibility of rejuvenation. Rejuvenation, going for fresher courses, value-adding skills, looking at things differently, adapting to the new environment. So a manager can rejuvenate himself or can just decline and become useless and moot in the workplace. So how does one do it? One of them is a manager needs to promote one's career, needs to understand what are the demands of that career, take any special career issues. Now, there are a number of issues that have happened in organizations. Managers are being demanded to remain relevant and continue adding value to the organization. But there have been certain changes which are inevitable, and they're having bigger impact on organizations, especially when it comes to management careers. For example, there are more women breaking the ice or breaking the glass, coming into the managerial positions. The tradition in some areas is still there. For example, some managers are still paid less than the male managers. Female managers are paid less in some areas. Some areas they have been able to balance that or square it off. Then there is also dual career couples where couples, they may be working, both of them working, and they are also parents. And then how do these people cope? So you may find that one job may have, or one aspect of life may have an impact or may be looked after better than the other. So how do we define managerial skills? There's one way we can look at it is a classic view, where technical skills are emphasized, human skills are also emphasized, and then conceptual skills. So what we mean is that a classic view says that a manager should have technical skills, should know how to do the job, should have the necessary qualifications, necessary skills, necessary competencies, abilities, and capabilities, should have the experience that is necessary, and then should also be a human being. We should be able to see, because a manager is giving the face to the organization, there should be social aspects, and here we are looking at emotional intelligence and social intelligence. And then the conceptual skills, that the manager should be able to find solutions that have been tested elsewhere and be able to adjust them to the actual environment that may be there. Then there's contemporary view, where it says that managers should be able to define major activities that they typically perform. So managers should be accountable, managers should be ethical, managers should emphasize on integrity, accountability, be reasonable, be psychologically able and balanced. Then it also talks of managers being able to list skills needed to carry out the activities successfully. So a manager holding a certain position should pray for continuity, whether they are there or they are not there. That's a contemporary view, that organizations outgrow people, organizations exist whether the particular individual is there or not. There are other major activities that modern managers typically perform. For example, task-related activities, people-related activities, change-related activities. Those activities are major, and managers today, they are called upon to realize that they need to meet certain goals or realize certain standards that have been set, and their products should meet these standards or the objectives, goals, the vision, the mission that the organization believes in. And then they also need to look at people, how to manage people, bring in the social aspect there, intra and interrelationships. And then the change-related activities where managers are able to adjust to the demands and needs of the time. So how do managers measure whether they're being effective or they're not being effective? So the first thing that they need to do is they need to determine the actual performance. The actual performance, what is being done, and they set goals, and then try to see whether it's being realized or not. So there are 4 common sources of information that managers can use to measure the actual performance. First, they can do a personal observation. Personal observation, managers can walk around the organization, what you call management by walking around. They can also consult. They can also just what you call an obstructed observation or obstructive observation. They can also get reports, mostly statistical reports, numbers, to see how many products have been made, how many employees are around, what is the cost, what is the profit, and all kinds of the input and the export. They can also get oral reports by engaging different departmental heads or particular employees. So they get these oral reports. They can also ask for written reports, which they can analyze with time. Now, management by walking around, it's mostly practiced when a manager is out in the work area interacting with employees. So you are able to see, observe, hear the actual happenings. So how do managers compare performance to planned goals? Range of variation, for example, the managers, the accepted parameters of variation between actual performance and the standard. Okay, so for example, if the gap between the realized and the set is so big, it means that the manager is not performing. But if the gap is small or non-existent, it means that the manager is realizing the set standards. So this helps us to realize whether a manager is performing or is not performing. Now, this also helps us to understand whether this particular situation needs attention. For example, if a manager realizes his set goals, it may mean the manager is efficient. It can also mean that the bar was set too low, so that needs to be attended to. If the manager is not realizing his goals, it may mean that the bar was set too high, or the manager is just unable to meet those goals because of a number of factors. It could be lack of seriousness, laziness, or the manager is just incapable of doing it. All right. So what managerial action can be taken? There are a number of them. One of them is immediate corrective action. When that is realized, corrective action needs to be carried out that addresses problems at once to get performance back on track. The second one would be basic corrective action, where corrective action that looks on how and why performance deviated from correcting the source before correcting the source of deviation. So we need to understand you can carry out the immediate corrective measures, or you try to understand why and how performance, where did it go wrong. Okay. So how can a manager control the workplace? One of them is the feedback forward control that takes place before the work activity is done, or concurrent control that takes place while the work activity is in progress. So feed forward control, you put in certain measures to ensure that if this happens, this is what is going to happen. So you are proactive. Concurrent control, you are looking at what is happening and you put in certain measures. Okay. So how do managers keep track of finances, for example? There are a number of ways. Finances, the organization needs to keep its finances in order and in place. So in order to meet profitability goals, managers need financial controls. You need to control the output to ensure that there is some money left in the coffers in form of profit or in form of less spending. There is also the traditional financial measures managers might use, for example, ratio analysis, budget analysis. So the manager can also use those facilities. Financial ratios by type, there are two types mostly. There's liquidity ratios and leverage ratios. Liquidity ratios, it measures an organization's ability to meet its current debt obligations, and leverage ratios examine the organization's use of debt to finance its assets and whether it's able to meet the interest payments on the debt. So it literally means borrowing in order to invest. There is also the activity ratios, where the organization assesses how efficiently a company is using its assets. And then profitability ratios, you measure how efficiently or effectively the company is using its assets to generate resources. So how is an organization's information controlled? Information is key. It's golden. It's something that can be used as a control factor. It's also a resource. So managers need to deal with information controls in two ways. One of them is to use it as a tool to help them to control other organizational activities, and the other way is to realize that information as in an organization, they need to control it. Now, what are we talking about here? We are talking about relevance of information. For example, the information should only be given to those people who are privy to that information, who are going to make use with that type of information. Information should not just be disseminated, or an organization will not be too effective if it's too open. It gives all kinds of information, and some of this information may be open to abuse or just useless way of wastage. The second one is management information system, which each and every organization at the moment tries to implement. This is a system used to provide management with needed information on a regular basis. So it's a question of just going to the system. The manager retrieves the type of information that he or she needs at that particular time. Now, what is a balanced scorecard? Balanced scorecard is an instrument that was introduced by Kaplan and Norton. It's a performance management tool that looks at more than just the financial perspective. It looks at human resources, it looks at organizational performance, it looks at different aspects of the organization and is able to measure and produce the results whether that particular aspect or particular component is performing or not. It will also give you the average of different components within the organization. Okay, so we need to look at those issues. Now, what are contemporary issues that we have in organizations? There's employee theft, workplace violence, which we need to look at in organizations. And then there's also the issue of operations, information systems, and contingency management, which we need to take note of in an organization. For example, operations management, there has to be operations management in the organization. There has to be information management, there has to be systems management, and contingency management. Operations, we are looking at a number of items there. We look at quality control, capacity planning, scheduling systems, inventory systems, cost-benefit analysis. All these will help the organization to be effective. Information management has developed over a period of time. There are milestones in information management, started in the 1400s with the horses, and the current times that looks at the internet. There are a number of factors that we may not consider as part of the information management. For example, cash registers, telephones, time clocks, personal computer. All these are part of the information management systems which the organization can use fully to make itself effective. Now, there's also the issue of the systems management. There are basically three system types that we find in an organization. There's open system, closed system, subsystem. Open system is the one that continuously interacts with the environment around it. Closed system is the opposite of an open system, and subsystem is part of the larger system. Contingency management, as we have discussed already, it holds that the most effective management theory or idea depends on the kinds of problems or or situations that a manager is facing at a particular moment. So the manager needs to find ways of dealing with certain situations. So management is harder than it looks. Managers need to spend more time analyzing problems before taking action. They need to pay attention to qualifying phrases such as usually or in such situations, what would one do? So in this course, what did we look at? We looked at what makes a good manager. A good manager is someone who does not only rely on efficiency, because efficiency alone is not enough. Success depends on treating workers well. So managers need to gain cooperation by ensuring that people are united, people have the tools necessary to produce certain things, and also that people are different. There's a difference between different employees. Therefore, each employee needs to be understood, needs to be helped to be consistent with the purpose of the organization, to put themselves in such a position that they are able to associate themselves with the organization, and they are also able to bring forward their personal interests and suggest ways on how the organization can be profitable. And then employees need to be appreciated accordingly.